This right here is my giveaway Yamaha XSR 900, and this is easily one of the most fun motorcycles I have ever owned. It handles great, the motor is a ton of fun, and it is putting down a perfectly nice 69 foot-pounds of torque. For those of you who might be wondering when I'm going to stop making that joke, the answer is never. But despite all of that, this bike has one major flaw, and it's the brakes. And today we're going to go over how I diagnose where the problem is and how I fix it. Now, I don't actually like spending a lot of money on motorcycles. I try to ride them as they are as much as humanly possible, because I'd rather be riding than wrenching, but there is a method to my madness when it comes to checking out the brakes, and I've done this on a ton of motorcycles. The first thing that I do is I look at the master cylinder right here. Specifically, I'm looking for any sort of mechanical adjustment in the lever, because every now and again, I've seen riders claim that brakes don't work, when actually what they're doing is they're reaching the limit of what the lever can give them on the master cylinder. I actually just had this happen in person because Chase was at the ARD day with me and he was riding an RS457 from Aprilia, and he thought that the brake was completely underpowered.
This is gonna go great.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Yeah, I'm not going farther than that. Absolutely not. God, and you still navigate it, bro.
I'm telling you, man, it's just, you gotta grab the lever harder.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt, I just gotta remind you that this is a giveaway motorcycle, and in case you're curious, there are 37 people entered to win this thing, which means that you could be number 38 by clicking that link down in the description below, getting yourself signed up to win.
Well, what do we do with that information?
What do you do with any information? You just stuff it deep down inside and keep an eye on it.
You keep it.
If the lever doesn't have any adjustment and you still find yourself pulling it to your knuckles, then your problem is actually elsewhere, because most stock levers that are non-adjustable are actually too far out, not too far in. If that's the case, try bleeding your fluid first, because it's the cheapest and it's usually where you're gonna find the problem. Any air bubbles in your fluid, especially on a bike like this that's equipped with an ABS pump, that's probably going to be your problem. If you've bled your brakes and you still feel like they suck, then chances are your problem is inside the caliper. Start with a new set of brake pads. Again, this is the next cheapest option, and a nice set of sintered pads here is going to make a huge difference in how bitey it feels. As you can see, we're gearing up to put a new set of pads in this XSR, but the problem with this bike, it's actually right between the master cylinder and the calipers, which makes it so much more complicated. For whatever reason, Yamaha decided to pair their really high quality Brembo master cylinder and their pretty decent house calipers with rubber lines on a bike that's making this much power. I know exactly why they did it. They thought they were gonna save a few coins in the manufacturing process, but the thing is, when you're talking about industrial quantities, it doesn't make sense to me to cheap out here, because it's not that much more expensive to just upgrade for the steel lines. But I know some folks may be wondering why these rubber lines are inadequate to keep up with the power of this motorcycle. And the answer is actually really simple, and that's heat. Brake pads are essentially crushed metal and magic smushed into a puck that rubs against a metal donut at high speed. That friction creates a ton of heat, but the thing is that heat doesn't stay in the pads. It'll work its way into the brake lines and start to heat up the fluid, which will heat up everything around it. Sometimes cheap brake fluid will boil sooner, especially older fluid which may have water in it, which is why I said to bleed that first. But rubber and heat don't mix, specifically in a system that requires constant pressure delivered through a fixed volume. It's even worse in places with hot ambient air temperature, since everything starts from a higher base temperature and doesn't cool nearly as efficiently. Hot rubber lines will be more flexible, and that's usually why they'll braid in some nylon reinforcing to keep the lines from expanding too much. The problem will get even more pronounced when we start looking at twisty road riding or track day riding, where you have a lot of hard braking and not a ton of time for the brake system to cool down. But I want to make one thing very clear. If you've bled the brakes, you've changed the pads, and you've adjusted the lever, and you are happy with how your rubber lines are performing, that's totally fine, and you don't need to spend the money on these braided lines, because they are expensive. But the reason why you would want something like this is because functionally, these will not expand. Another benefit of switching to these is because you have that fixed volume, you get a lot more communication out of the brake pads at the lever. You know exactly what's happening down there. Just feels a little bit more direct. Now let's get these things installed on the motorcycle, because this thing has an ABS pump, which makes the process just that little bit more complicated, which is awesome. I love that Yamaha did this. I'm so happy. That's exactly how I wanted to spend my afternoon. Now, while I'm tearing this bike apart, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Calimoto, and it's because of them that I was able to spend $400 to buy a bunch of parts for this thing to fix Yamaha's mistake. If you're unaware, Calimoto is the best app for motorcyclists because it shows you where all the twisty roads are around you. It's also one of the easiest ways to plan rides and share them with your buddies. For me, one of the more annoying parts about using my phone and Google Maps to plan a ride is making sure you get all the waypoints set up, but Calimoto makes it easy because they have a web app where you can set up everything with a few clicks of a mouse, and then you can pull it up right here on your phone instantly and share it with your buddies just that easily. Or maybe you're feeling lazy and you just want to copy off of someone else's homework. Well, luckily Calimoto has a bunch of rides from riders nearby, highlighting a bunch of different routes you may not have discovered, and you can just open it up really quickly, and then you just hit start planning, let it load, and you're ready to rock and roll. If any of this sounds good to you, click the links down in the description below where you can get 30 days free, or you can get 10% off a yearly subscription by using the codes listed down below or right here on the screen. I can just about promise you when you're done with this, the last thing you're gonna wanna do is keep wrenching on your motorcycle, and you're definitely gonna wanna see how it feels, so check that link down in the description below. But now that we're done with that, let me show you what we're looking at with this ABS pump, because, God, here we go. So this is the pump itself right here, and these front two hard lines, these go down to the rear master cylinder, which is kind of ironic, and then these come up to this little connector. This is where all our lines are gonna go for the front. But essentially, you have a line coming up from the master cylinder into the ABS pump, then down to the caliper, and this is what's gonna actuate the brake if you stamp on it. So if you feel those clicks, it's actually this thing working. In order to get to the front brake lines though, we're gonna have to pull these off. And yeah, there's just gonna be brake fluid everywhere in this motorcycle, which is gonna be awesome. I can't wait to do that. Fuck, that took forever. All right, it took some significant doing, but finally have the front ABS lines run from the master cylinder to the ABS pump and down to the caliper. Let me show you. So as you can see, comes down there, runs back up into the bike, under the airbox, over to this pump right here, and then back out the front of the motorcycle, around and down. Then it's gonna go back up and over. Now it's time to bleed this sucker. I can bleed the front because the front and the back are independent, so I'm not gonna mess anything up. So just gonna try to pull as much of this air out of here as humanly possible. Gonna take a while. One absolute unit of a mess later, it's time to get the calipers out so that I can get the pads out. Now, you can do this on this bike without actually having to take the calipers off. I find it a little easier to do it with them off the bike. Those pads actually look pretty good. Ta-da! So I calculated those rotor bolts to be, or those caliper bolts to be roughly 64 unga bungas. So that feels good to me. There we go. Perfect. 69 Ungabungas, we're good. Now, if I were keeping this motorcycle, I would stop here because I almost never use the back brake, but I'm not keeping it, so I'm gonna suffer on, finish the back brake up, and I'm not going to make you guys sit through that, so.
6.5 hours later.
Alrighty, the bike is back together, and it only required to Dremel 2 things. This is, an object lesson for those folks who think that all Japanese parts are sacrosanct and they can do no wrong. They absolutely aren't. They're not perfect. It may be a little tough to see, but this right here is an ABS line fitting. And as you can see, those edges are starting to round off. This actually isn't a full 10 millimeter. It's like approximately 10 mils, and in case you're curious, no, it is not an Imperial unit either. Neither of them fit great. So what I had to do is I had to Dremel off the end there and then get a deep socket on there so that I didn't round these edges off. So for all of those folks out there who are saying that all these Japanese bikes are unparalleled because their parts are of higher quality, no, they're not.
It's American component, Russian component, all made in Taiwan.
But now that we have that said, we do need to get this thing out on the road. And I know it's been sitting on the lift, and if you're like me, you want to go rip it and see how those new brakes feel. But we have to wait because there's one thing we have to do first. So if you want the very best performance out of your new brake pads, the best thing you want to do is take the time to bed them in. And it's a very simple process. It's really easy to skip over, but it can also just lead to your pads not living as long, not feeling as good, or just generally not performing the way you want them to. The problem is, bedding down pads is one of those just tedious things. It takes time and you'd rather just be riding. So I'll show you how I do it real quick. First thing I do is I'll just, poodle around a little bit. Because even now, your pads are contacting the rotors, even when you're just riding. So just do a little bit of this to just get them going. And then come from like 5 or 10 to a very gentle stop. Barely touching that front lever, just a little bit. You just watch my right hand there. I'm just barely grabbing the lever. All you want to do is just get that surface to start touching just a little bit. Do that a handful of times. And then you really just keep doing this for a while. Little bit more pressure, little bit more speed. Little bit more pressure, little bit more speed. Letting those rotors cool down. And then eventually, you'll get to that point where you need to do yourself a panic stop. And really get those pads biting. Really get them good and hot. Not only is this really good to improve the longevity of your brake pads, but it's also a really good opportunity for you to practice with your new brake setup, because you just changed a massive thing about how the bike works, and it takes some time for you to figure that out.
But then once your pads are all bed in, it's time to hit the road, and I gotta say, I am thoroughly impressed by how much the braking performance on this motorcycle has changed. I'll tell you a quick little story. I just did a track day at Hallett, and I had in mind that I was gonna go take this motorcycle up there to see how it felt on the track, but I couldn't get the lines on in time, and the front brake feel was so vague, so numb, that I actually elected not to take this on the racetrack because I wasn't sure I was going to get the feedback that I wanted, and I was a little bit worried that even at my meager pace in the intermediate group that we were going to start experiencing some fade, and there's no real runoff at Hallett. I mean, there's a ton of grass, but it's hard to come to a stop in the grass. But speaking of coming to a stop, come around this corner, and from 70, riding the ABS, it is amazing how quick this bike will stop now. And it just goes to show what I knew going into this video, and that's that Yamaha cheaped the fuck out and they completely kneecapped the performance of this motorcycle. But now I can have the lever exactly where I need to be, and it tells me exactly what's happening at the front wheel. Such a massive improvement. And again, what the fuck, Yamaha? Why did I have to spend $400 to do it? Come on, man. If you're interested in winning this bike, click that link down in the description below where you can get yourself signed up to win. There are not that many folks entered. I'll have them on screen, but your odds are actually really high with these Fan of Them giveaways. That's one of the things that I've noticed. Like the last couple of giveaways have only had like 150 to maybe 200 people. So versus some of those other raffles you see out there, you actually have a really good chance. Not to mention you will be directly supporting me and allowing me to make cooler content with these bikes rolling through the garage. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.